Sean McGowan for acoustic guitar, and in this lesson we're going to be taking a look at a really cool low tuning that I call a cello tuning that I think that you'll find very useful and sonorous in your own playing and arrangements. What I really like about this tuning is that it gives you access to some low notes, and I call it the cello tuning because it actually gives you some stacked fifths at the bottom, the low register of the guitar tuned in fifths like a cello or a mandolin or a member of the string family. But the top four strings from the D up to the high E string are in standard, so it's not that foreign, it's not that unfamiliar. So another term that I use is kind of like a cheater's 7-string. You know, we've all heard of the cheater's 12-string. Well, this is kind of like a cheater's 7-string guitar by having those low notes give you access to the range that a 7-string guitar might. So this is the tuning from low to high. Low C, G, D, G, B, and E. So as I mentioned, the top four strings are still in standard tuning, while the two low strings, the low E tunes down 2 whole steps to a low C below that, and then the A string goes down one whole step to G. And you get this really nice, beautiful open sound. And I kind of stumbled upon this tuning many years ago in transcribing a piece for piano. It was a solo piano piece that was in the key of D major, and it kept going to all of these low Cs, and the majority of the piece was in D, and I just wanted, you know, drop D just wasn't capturing everything that I wanted to, especially those low C notes. So after a little bit of experimentation, this is what I stumbled upon, and I like it because as one who doesn't play a whole lot with alternate tunings, this one seemed pretty cozy and familiar to me by having the same chord shapes available on the top four strings. I've since come to discover that this is a very common tuning in Hawaiian slack key style playing. It's known as the wahine tuning, and it's just really beautiful. So again, we have a low C, a low G above that, and then the rest is standard. D, G, B, E. So the first thing I think we should just take a quick second to talk about how to get into that tuning, and it's very quick and very easy. So I do a little simple 3-step process, starting off in standard tuning. I'll take the low E string and just drop it a whole step down to D, which is very common for a lot of us acoustic fingerstyle players, as if we we're going into a drop D. Take it down to D, then I take the A string down a whole step to G, and then finally the third step is drop that now low D string down another whole step to low C. Now, while you do that, the other strings will tend to go sharp. So you'll need to take a minute to tune it up and try some different octaves and open strings mixed with fretted notes. But it is the kind of thing that you can do on the fly and tune in between songs. And it will really give you this wonderful expanded palette of notes to choose from. All right, so let's take a look at example 1. So as you can see right off the bat, we have an open C major that's really easy to play, and it's basically kind of coming off of our standard C form from Caged, and we just have an open C and G at the bottom, and then into a normal C fingering for the top. So this is example 1, C major. And that's a movable form. So if you look at the next chord, D major, now we just have to bar it with our first finger and do the same shape. So that would give us a D major. And how I'm seeing it is just kind of like that D shape right there with the low root and fifth on the bottom. And then the nice triad on top. So that's really nice to kind of just toggle back and forth between chords that you already know. The third chord in example 1 is E minor. And that sounds exactly like our normal, kind of open position E minor chord. It looks a little different, but now our E is up here in the 4th fret, our B, the 5th, is up here on the 4th fret as well, and then the top of the chord is just the standard 2, 0, 0, 0. And also what's really cool, especially if you're playing in the key of C or in, A minor or an F or G, you can use those low notes to really support higher voicings, such as the 4th voicing, another C major in example 1. Now we just have a C major triad on top here. we can support that with these nice big resonant low notes below that. And as I mentioned, I stumbled into this tuning trying to transcribe a piano piece, and I realized that this is a very pianistic. I mean, it's a cello-like tuning, of course, because of the fifths on the bottom. But I think of it as a very piano-like tuning as well, because you can get this real expansive range of notes between these real crystalline, high notes up here with the triads, supported by the low notes on the bottom. So let's take a look at example 2 now. These show some different forms now using F as the root. So the first F major chord here in example 2, the fingering is just like that D chord we saw in example 1. It's just kind of like a bar shape, and then we plug in that F triad on top, and that gives us this. And I think what's always a good idea when you're working with an alternate tuning, regardless of how close or far away it is from standard tuning, is just to kind of go through a chord voicing and maybe name the notes and the function of the chord tones. So we have an F, there's our root, now on the fifth fret, low string. And then we have a C, a fifth above that, and then that goes right into an A. And just those bottom 3 strings give us an open major triad sound, which is a very piano-like voicing. And it sounds huge and open, there's lots of air in there, it's wonderful sound. And then we can just add another F triad on top of that. If you look at the second chord in example 2, now we're just going to adjust that and make it into an F minor chord. And so the way to do that is to recognize where the third is, right here in the 7th fret, D string, drop that down or flatten it, lower it, and now we have the fingering for F minor. We can also play 7th chords as well. The next chord shape is F7, F major 7. You can even grab that high third on the top if you want. And then finally, one of my favorites in this tuning, F minor 7. Sorry. There it is. And all of these chord forms are movable. So it might take you a minute to learn where the notes are. But for example, if this is F minor 7, we can move that up 2 frets to get a G minor 7. All of these shapes are movable. All right, moving on to example 3. Now we're going to look at E flat as the root. And these are just some really simple, easy to play. That's another reason why I really love this tuning so much, is the voicings are so accessible. They sound so good, and physically they're really easy to play. So if we check out that first chord, E flat 6 in example 3, we have this. I'm sorry, that's an E. That's just a regular power chord, E flat 5. So we have root, 5, and then a root. Kind of looks like an upside down power chord there in that fingering. Now, if we want to access some other sounds, we can just alter the shape. And so if we did kind of like a little mini bar chord here on the bottom 3 strings, now we get a really nice sus2 sound. One of my favorite chords. It's like stacked fifths, and that's what sounds like a cello to my ears. Then, if we add another note on the D string, 1/2 step above that, we get an E minor triad. And again, these are open triads. They have a root, a fifth, and then the third is up on top, an octave higher. So it's a very simple and easy to play voicing that sounds very much like a piano. Okay, the next voicing here is E flat sus4, still within reach here. Just drop the pinky down on the 6th fret there, and then we can resolve that to E flat major. It's a really nice sound. So what I would recommend is just to take one of these shapes, like maybe just something real simple, like a major triad, and move them around to get accustomed to the new notes on the bottom 2 strings. So we have a C major, D major, E flat major, F major, and so on. And we can do the same thing with minor triads. So now we have C minor, D minor, E flat minor, F minor. They sound really nice and they're very easy to play. You could do the same thing, sus2 voicings, which is even easier because it's just a simple bar. So C sus2, D, E flat, F sus2. So take your time and have a lot of fun and enjoy exploring these new sonorities and textures with these very accessible and easy to remember fingerings. Now let's take a look at expanding these very simple voicings. So in example 4, we're just going to add one additional note. So we're going to take our 3-note voicings that we looked at in example 3, add a 4th note, and that's going to give us some additional colors, especially when we want to play 6th and 7th chords. So check out example 4. Now we have an E flat 6 chord. So we're going to still use E flat on the 3rd fret here in 3rd position as our root. So we have our major triad like we saw in example 3. And then if we add a note on the G string, in this case on the 5th fret, we have this really nice voicing for a major 6 chord. And if we were in standard tuning, that would look like, it would look like a power chord really with kind of like an extra, 5th on the bottom. But now this fingering in this new tuning sounds like a really beautiful 6 chord. And like all of these other chords, they're all movable. Really nice. The next chord is E flat minor 6. So all we need to do is find that 3rd here and flatten it or lower it by 1 fret. And now we have this. That's a cool sound. Minor 6. All right, and then we can also play 7ths. So E flat major 7th, it's a little bit of a stretch, but not too much. To me, it looks like kind of the chords in, like an Andy Summers riff, a lot of the classic Police songs. It's sort of stacked fifths, but this will give us an E flat major 7 sound. Again, you can move it around. These voicings are great if you're playing in a context without a bass player, because now you have that kind of low end is coming through. All right, the next voicing we have is E flat minor 7. And then finally E flat dominant 7. I love that voicing. Sounds like something that you would hear in Debussy's music. So in example 5, we're just going to switch things up a little bit by dropping down to D, 1 fret, and now in 2nd position, and add a 5th note. And we're going to just kind of expand the range and colors of our voicings. So in example 5, now we have a D add 9, which looks and sounds like this. So that add 9, that E in this case is up on the B string, sounds really nice. And again, with these new voicings, I think it's helpful to like recognize the smaller parts within. So if we look at this, we're like, okay, well here's that open major triad voicing on the bottom here. That's an open D major. And then we're adding in the 5 on top of that on the 2nd fret G string, and then the 5th fret B string will have our add 9. So that's a cool sound. Okay, the next chord in example 5 is just a straight up minor triad. Okay, it kind of sounds like a bar chord in standard tuning. But we can also add that 9 like we saw with the first chord on top of the minor, and now we get a really nice D minor add 9 sound. It's a great chord to end the song with. And you also have this range below E, that you would have in standard tuning. So for example, if you were playing a song in E flat minor, you could end off with this really nice minor 9, or minor add 9 sound. Okay? All right, the next chord is a D major 7, and that's super easy to play. All we do is just bar the 2nd position here, add on the 3rd finger, and now we're in business. If we go back to our original 6 voicing that we saw in example 4 and just plug the pinky in there, now we get a major 13 voicing. That's a really sweet sound. I love it, especially if you move it around. Okay, now we have a D minor 9. So again, the difference between this and the D minor add 9 is the D minor 9 now includes the 7th. So we're going to play that on which is the C, we're going to play that on the 5th fret G string, and here it is. What a sweet voicing that is. It's a really sweet sound. And then if we just alter the third a little bit, or you know, move the third around a little bit, we can play D dominant 9, D9, and then finally D major 9, a little bit of a stretch there. And there you have it. All right, before we move on to some playing examples, let's check out example 6, which gives us some of these same chord forms, now with the root on the 5th string, which is now tuned to G. So we can call that the G string, or let's just call it the 5th string. So example 6 starts off with a C chord, and this is really cool. Normally we would be, you know, if we were in standard tuning, we would be playing kind of like a A-shaped bar chord. Now you can just, since everything is moved up a whole step, a C in a bar shape would be all on the 5th fret here. So we have C, and then there's the major triad above that. So you can literally play a major chord with just one finger. All right, to play a minor version of that, we have to switch up the voicing just a little bit, but we still have basically a root and a 5th, so a power chord at the bottom. We add our pinky onto the 8th fret, and now we have a C minor. And that gives us that nice, you know, open minor triad. We can also play a C major 7. That's the 3rd chord in example 6. We can play a minor 7. A couple of different ways to finger that you might want to check out. I'm actually doing a little mini bar with my pinky on the 8th fret. If it's not too much of a stretch, you could also finger that with 3 and 4, your 3rd and 4th finger on the 8th fret, while the C hangs down on the 5th position. And then we have C dominant 7, and then C dominant 9. Those are probably my favorite voicings in terms of the root 5 voicings that we have to work with. So again, all movable forms. So just, you know, explore these sounds in one key, like in, you know, C in example 6, and then move them around the keys, and gradually you'll get the hang of where all of these new notes are located. All right, have fun with that. Okay, here's example 7. A 1, 2, 3, and. Here's example 8. 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, here's example 9. 1, 2, 3, and. Here's Fanny Power, played A, A, B, B. 1, 2.